to a new episode of Zen Mystery TV. I'm Carlos Antonio.
Dennis Hunter.
And yeah, here we go.
All right, what are you up to this week? What do you got to share?
I have some very interesting things that are kind of starting to feel more serendipitous, if you might say.
Serendipitous? I heard you went to some fortune telling. Glorified fortune telling?
Glorified, not so glorified. Nobody really knows about her very much. But I did have an interesting experience. But what's more interesting that's going on this week is that I revisited a TED Talk that I thought was, pretty remarkable. I'd heard it before, but it hadn't quite impacted me as deeply as it did right now. It was actually, let me go ahead and make sure I get the name correct. But it's How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And actually it's by Simon Sinek. And it's actually from it was filmed in 2009. And 19. It was filmed in 2009, but it actually got pulled from a TEDx event onto the actual TED website. And right now it's the 7th most watched TED Talk, of all. And it's incredibly
millions, tens of millions of people.
Yeah. So it's actually incredibly impactful, and I somehow I think that maybe working with new startups or new projects like Zen Mystery is still pretty new, and Emerald MedArts is still pretty new, and so it was. I think the talk went much deeper than it had before. At least it was much more relevant this time, in having to do with why organizations or why people are capable of inspiring loyalty and just inspiring action. And so it's incredibly interesting, his concept of the golden circle. This interest that most everyone is very aware of how they manage, of what they do. And most people know how they do it, but very few people know why they do what they do, and very few organizations know why they do what they do. So this kind of soul searching set me on a kind of on a very interesting introspective journey these past few days. And I don't know if you remember, I was sitting there working on the logo for our brand new logo for Emerald MedArts, which I actually hadn't quite debuted yet, but it had to do, and I was drawn to
Debut.
Well, debut, you might say.
It's like a full feature film.
That's right. I'm gonna have previews for our logo and everything. Coming soon.
Red carpet.
Yeah, coming soon. The logo from Emerald MedArts. I became actually really fascinated with the idea of the golden ratio, and it led me to the golden triangle, golden circle. Well, to the golden.
I'm clueless, so clue me in. What is that? Sounds Egyptian almost.
Well, what's very interesting is that as far as a golden triangle, golden circle, or golden spiral, when you start talking about that mathematically, going back to Leonardo da Vinci, he was talking about seeing certain patterns in the golden ratio in the most beautiful works of art, very organized patterns in nature. The idea that in all of these things that we consider to be very chaotic, talk about life as very entropy, that really things just kind of fall apart. But actually this is a concept that states quite the opposite, that things behave in a kind of harmony all their own. And the beautiful thing that I stumbled upon in talking about creating something that represented the meditative arts, in Tai Chi. I always talk about the spiral, and the golden spiral really captured my imagination. So here we are looking at the why, behind why organizations work, or why and how, or why especially Emerald MedArts exists, and it's just a beautiful thing to contemplate. I'm going to go ahead and definitely link that to the bottom of our post so you can appreciate it for yourself. And I don't know, for myself, I'd love to know whether or not that occurred to you when you were creating Zen Mystery.
So what was the exact question? What occurred?
The why. Really the why. Why Zen Mystery, how Zen Mystery does what it does. What it does.
For me, the experience was different, right? I mean, I've read, I saw quality posts on Facebook and I liked it, but I never dug deeper
Hmm.
into the video or anything like that. So, and I like what you just said, what is it, great leaders inspire action,
Inspire action and loyalty.
and I love a little comeback, I have a comeback for you.
Oh, sure.
And great spiritual leaders cause inaction. Oh, clever, boom.
Well, my interest would be in what sense, because I think that can be confusing for most people.
Well, so I was just kidding. So, meditation, right? And
Right.
then once you settle in, you can do action from inaction, right? But then let's not concentrate on that. So you're asking me about.
That's a very interesting topic. That's a very interesting.
You want to dive into that?
Well, I mean, you hit on a very interesting
So
Yeah.
I'll tell you
issue.
what an issue I have with the quote you have.
Sure.
Because there's a whole industry of inspirational industry.
Sure.
And then there's a whole inspirational marketing industry out there, and it's
Sure.
very hyper. You know, it's exciting. You can do all this stuff. You can all these tools, and you can promote yourself, blog. And it's like a lot of hyper, fast, boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes you away from. Oh, here.
Does it have to?
But it's such
That's
a major hype in the industry, and it's not everybody's like that. But in
Mhm.
general,
Mm-hmm.
you can read and you can get inspired to do stuff what you're passionate about. But you have to kind of, if you're a meditative person, you have a meditative practice, I think you got to be careful not to lose your touch with your meditation.
Right.
That you can carry it later into action. So the industry is all about go, 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 do.
Rather than be.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
So there's a whole big industry. I don't know about this video, so I didn't watch it. I'm just talking about the industry that I
No,
was
sure.
part of.
Actually,
It's
one
a
of the-
beautiful. It has its place. I'm not against it,
Mhm.
but I was just saying you gotta be. If you're in a spiritual practice or meditative practice, you have to find some balance.
I think that
Because
that's
that's
where the why comes from, where the why arises from.
So and then
At least for me, in looking at it myself.
And then
being-
the question is, then my story is that then mystery was started in my mind in a different form or shape many, many years ago, probably around the time you and I met in college, which was 15 years ago, so.
Shh. Tell them. I'll start working at it.
So, and then it was, I didn't have finance, I didn't have, people to help me do it.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden now, it just happened that way. I felt that I had to get out of the way
Mhm.
and let the universe kind of go through that. And I just go along,
Beautiful.
just drag along.
That's the way it is, yeah.
Kind of
Sure.
synchronicity in a sense.
Absolutely.
As much, I mean, it's a little new agey term, right? It has a little.
I don't think it
Cheese
necessarily
experience.
has to be.
It's a beautiful experience when you feel that, when things start lining up, but it doesn't always happen that way.
No, sure.
And it's, but when it happens, it makes you feel inspired.
Mhm.
So that's how the mystery created. I felt like there was no other way.
Mhm.
And we put everything on the line. The experience was, if that's not gonna happen, I couldn't sit. Something was moving me in a certain way, in a peaceful way.
Mhm.
But I had to manifest that, and the way it all came together, if I would decided to do it myself with my own skills,
Right.
I'm not a designer.
Mhm.
I'm not any kind of designer. So it kind of came together one step at a time.
Mhm.
So that's my experience.
Sure.
And now we're just
So that's an interesting thing.
trying to build up on it and
Yeah.
build a nice team and create a community
Mhm.
and not lose touch with what we've learned here.
Of course.
Because you can get caught up, you gotta get business going, you can
It's one of the things that it
you get
talks about.
scared, you get freaked out, you get
Sure,
scared, so make sure not to lose integrity, not lose your spirituality, keep that all
The
balanced.
core. The why,
Okay.
as you would say. That's what he's talking about with the golden circle, and I think that's a beautiful thing, that you get so caught up in the surviving, the almost like manipulating in a certain way, the why and the how you do things that you forget. Well, not the why, but the how and what you do in trying to manufacture ways of surviving and forgetting the why. And he talks about actually the why getting fuzzy. It's a very interesting.
And it's interesting because there's this teacher that teaches this kind of workshops in Omega.
Right,
And Lena went into the workshop before we built,
And he
Manifest
created a link to
Industry.
something like that. I think it was something.
So he has workshops. An Omega has workshops twice a year, and he said an interesting thing that
Manifesting your vision.
Manifesting
called
your vision.
Manifesting Your Vision.
Hmm.
So by Stefan, long name.
We'll put it up there.
We'll put it there. Okay.
Radio founder.
The original founder of Omega. So he talked about that people forget why,
Right. Exactly. Very interesting.
and then most likely business fails.
Exactly. Very interesting.
Especially if it's a spirit, the context was spiritual business for them,
Hmm.
like some kind of conscious business.
Yeah.
Once you start chasing
Numbers.
numbers, I mean, not just numbers,
From the
but it's like
mechanical-
into
in a
the
mechanical
it's
sense,
like
in a-
surviving. And once you start to build it, it's definitely real.
Right,
You gotta always kind of retreat and like clear your head. I'm like, okay, what are we here for? And
Foundation.
it gets clearer. The message gets clearer, and you kind of figure out.
Yeah,
You might change your mind. You
Well, yeah,
may-
sure. I mean, one of the people that he talked about the most is he talked about Martin Luther King. He talked about Apple, especially as an organization. Well, it's got a lot of bad rep in certain instances, but the way
Yeah.
they do their business internally, at first, like think differently. The entire concept of it, it was very interesting to see his perspective.
I think the whole world romanticized the idea of
But why?
Apple.
But why? Which is very interesting.
Because Apple is the biggest brand in the world.
It wasn't.
And he believed in what he wanted to do,
Mhm.
and he was very successful
Mhm.
at times,
Sure.
and very not successful at times as well.
Sure.
So people were inspired that, oh, this is what I want to do, and I'm gonna. And it's like there's a whole goes back to that whole marketing machine, and Apple thrived because of that, right? Their core people were in the beginning were educators, right? Back in the day,
Mhm.
and stuck with them until the company was dying. The educators liked the concept, but now what I see is happening. And that's why I'm like, with
I can
Apple
see
because
more and
it's
more.
a big consumerism machine.
Well, it goes and it goes with maybe perhaps the reason why it's lost its why, And of course you have the death of the founder and etc. Now moving on from that,
And it doesn't help that the founder was a major asshole.
Well, and there are some positive
Don't
aspects of
hold
that
back.
and some negative
Tell us
aspects
how
of
you
that.
feel.
There's beautiful. I would say that I know many beautiful assholes as far as the way they
Well,
they
he was
move in the world.
He was just one angry dude from insiders.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to do something. He would take no for an answer, and if people
He
disagreed
would not
with
take
him,
no for an answer.
he wouldn't take no answer, and he had strong people with him
Mhm.
that didn't like what he was doing and would speak against him. He would be so angry, he would be spitting in your face, and that happened all the time. All the time.
Interesting. Well, I mean, one of the things that he just definitely goes back into is that it was an example of an organization that creates its focus around the why that they do business. And so, aside from all these little details, in the end, what you're looking at is looking at why you get up and do what you do, and
Yeah,
why the
and
organization.
I love the quote, what do you put in thing? I think it was all about the why, wasn't it? It
Exactly.
was like, so you wake up in the morning and why are you doing that? And actually I have a nice little segue, but I'm gonna leave it.
Leave into it because I
Actually-
think we're ready to move right into it.
Maybe I'm not gonna wait, so I'm
Yeah, jump into
because
it.
I was scanning through back the Edith book, and I was scanning through trying to get some topics for today, and I was like, tiny little chapter.
Hmm. Some of
It's
those
an
are best.
interesting why because I mean it's not exactly related to what we're talking about, but it has a nice
The resonance there.
roots. No, roots behind. So as a man, this book was for dudes. For
I think it works for anyone,
for
to a certain degree.
The people for dude energy.
Masculine energy. Women.
The chapter is tiny. It's called "Live as if your father were dead."
Hmm.
So, a man must love his father and yet be free of his father's expectations and criticism in order to be a free man. So, I think the why for us
It
So
needs to be your very own why.
it has to be your own why, and maybe not even your very own, maybe beyond yourself.
Yes, absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
What's your purpose in the world?
Well, it's never, the why usually has to do with others, which is very interesting. The most inspiring thing is that it's a devotion to others, and what it, kind of the strongest why it arises from.
So how I see it is the why has to be your deepest self at the moment, because there's always a little deeper and deeper, right? You have to live your own kind of depth
Mm.
and never fluctuate from that. You have to, that's where integrity comes in, right?
Yeah.
You have to like, this is my deepest and I'm living from that and I'm working on the next level, down,
Mm.
deeper.
Reminds me of Zen archery. Concept of Zen archery.
So the chapter is very little and very cool, you know. I like what a little exercise he gives at the end. It's lovely.
Hmm.
You can try it, let me know next week how it goes. He says that to practice, I think, for the next 3 days, do at least one activity a day that you have avoided or suppressed because of the influence of your father.
Hmm.
So that's pretty cool. Does that resonate with you at all, or
Not much. Since I was about 10, I did whatever I wanted. I was only afterwards saying sorry.
Well,
I was a
how
little-
I see it, I
little
know
stubborn.
sometimes we rebel and we do stuff what they don't want us to do,
Mhm.
right? So, but we still bounce off the idea of the parents.
Sure.
So it's still attached.
There's some kind of play
So
there. I
almost
can
we
see
have to
that.
kind of clear the plate,
Mhm.
internal
I can
plate,
definitely see that.
and find maybe the empty space, and then go deeper than that
Mhm.
and get on the flow of
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
purpose at the
Mhm.
moment and see like synchronicity.
Yeah.
And I go, you know, today something fell off the refrigerator, on the side of the refrigerator. And I was like, oh, I fell, I'm in a rush, I'm tired. And I pick up the magnet, it's like, easy does it. Nice.
Very nice.
So, do you have anything else to share, or should I jump into the next topic?
Well, let me see. I had something that I was working on in relation to what we mentioned earlier, which had to do with Viktor Frankl's actually brain pickings website online. Wonderful article that came up almost in relation to what I was watching with regards to that TED Talk, which had to do with logotherapy. And Viktor Frankl, of course, is
What therapy?
logotherapy.
Logo, like a website logo?
It's very interesting. Comes back to logos,
You're
right?
getting a little therapy for your logo?
Logos, or is it logos therapy? It could be.
Logo's a little tired, has been working too much.
What Viktor Frankl talked about, and we're talking about a famous Holocaust survivor who wrote a wonderful book, A Life of Meaning. Actually, Meaning of Life, or working on a man's. I have to look at the exact title.
That's all right.
It's a super famous book, but talking about logotherapy and the idea that people's happiness, you know, especially when they're, you know, their soul's being crushed in a situation as extreme as being threatened with something like the Holocaust, you know, seeing who rose and who just got crushed under that kind of pressure was an amazing experience for Viktor Frankl himself. And logos therapy, coming back to therapy of finding meaning, of creating, not finding meaning, but creating meaning in your life. And I thought that was pretty remarkable. There's something very interesting there.
I don't know what the book is about, but creating meaning, it's a little,
Yeah.
a little
Learning.
less- I'm not sure if I like that concept, at least from what I hear.
Well, you haven't heard much, so I'm just interested in what it is.
Creating meaning,
Hmm.
like why do you need to create meaning?
I think you'd have to find out for yourself. I think the difficulty for the crippling aspect that happened to some of these individuals is that they were incapable. They didn't have a why. They could not find a why. And it broke down internally, meaning the why for their lives. And the ability to discover that why, to find that why.
So basically find some way to create a meaning in your life at the moment until you can do some therapy and put yourself together until you get to the why, maybe?
Possibly.
I mean, this is
I'd have to look at it
this
much
is
more-
deep therapy, this is not a light conversation.
No.
So,
Well, I think it's worth taking a look at in regards to what I'm saying. But go ahead, I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was a wonderful article, maybe interesting for people to take a look at. But you had,
so
let's go on to what else you had.
the
I just
other
wanted to
thing
mention that.
I wanted to talk about, I actually want to spin it off as a separate video, but we can have it part of the, obviously, the TV show, is I know you asked a question.
Excellent.
You asked a question.
I think probably before we move into that,
Uh-huh.
let's go ahead and pause for a moment and we'll begin right into that. Because I think we've been going on
Oh, okay.
pretty
all right.
regularly.
So,
We had a brief intermission,
so, the
which you're probably not going to notice much of. Although we're kind of
So,
like making it happen.
controversial topic that you
Okay.
actually inquired, and I didn't want to talk about because we have shows getting along, is the controversial topic is, hope you like it and keep watching the whole thing.
That'd be good.
5 minutes, 2 minutes in, you're like, oh. I just watch it because I like those guys, so pretend. So,
That'd be strange.
the show was, you asked a question, I said that raw food diet could be the best diet you're gonna ever have, or the worst, or the worst nightmare.
Mhm.
And you're like, ooh, what does that mean? So do you have any particular question, like why, or should I just jump in, right?
Well, I mean, I had my own personal experience, which I found it, there wasn't just, we had talked about at a certain point, I was gonna do like a 90-day challenge and slowly transform myself into completely raw food, diet. It's actually a good idea because it would happen gradually. But I think I kind of went a little too fast, and at the time I realized that I was coming up with another excuse for why not to stay in integrity with the project that I was currently working on finishing my film. But I definitely felt that there were some moments that I kind of pulled too quick of a change, and I felt really not very good for a few days. I was feeling really not good.
Major detox symptoms, emotional and
Possibly.
physical?
Yeah, I think a little combination of both.
So what we want to spin is, I don't want to get too nutritional, so we can spin it a little more like emotional and spiritual answers, right? So what's interesting about healthy diet is
What about
that
spin? Spin is being tricky. I think focus.
focus.
Yeah.
So people nowadays know what not to eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I know what's bad for me, so I shouldn't eat it. But if I don't eat it, that's hard because I don't enjoy it. And food is one of the few things I really enjoy in life. I don't like my job. At least I enjoy my food.
Mm.
So, and
This
a
is
lot
what people are thinking.
yeah, so
Right.
that's usually an experience, right? Generalizing. So, and then if you ever go on like a fast or something, you like realize, oh my God, my life revolves around food, tasty food. And I know in one of the documentaries, I don't know if you remember this part on the Crazy Sexy Cancer,
Mm.
where she's going on a fast and she's supposed to eat like alkaline diet and like smoothies and juices. She's on the camera and she's talking about, like they're very philosophical. Our life, you realize life revolves around food, and like you wake up in the morning and you look forward to a cup of coffee and a bagel. She started crying, bagel. It's a bagel.
I remember that.
A muffin. I think it was a muffin. It was a muffin. You're like a muffin. Start crying. It happens to most people. It's not an easy journey because we are attached to food.
Mm.
So what I share with people that you have to learn how to be balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And after being able to stay on a 100% raw diet for 6 years plus, I think, I kind of went through a lot of experiences and figure out what's the best, right? So if you don't figure out a balanced diet, because in the beginning, you were eating like burgers, and now you took a next step down, and now you're eating vegetarian or whatever, or if you jump from burgers to raw food, in the beginning you'll be flying high, feeling awesome, and then the demons are going to come out of your head,
Mm.
or physicality of it is going to be sick, and then you're not going to feel good,
Mm.
and your first reaction is like, well, I didn't feel so good, so I felt good on the bad diet, so that's better for me.
Right.
So the balance. So
Right,
if you're not like super sick of some kind of disease and you have some time to spare, so maybe go gradually,
Mm-hmm.
not too slow.
Right.
One thing you should eat or you shouldn't eat, well, take care of it.
Mhm.
Just, you know it, why are you doing it? Just take
Right.
care of it, you already know, you educated yourself. My approach always been educate and then implement, right? So,
We're talking, repeat those films again, because at first, when I was looking at it, I thought they were wonderful too.
Crazy Sexy Cancer.
Crazy Sexy Cancer, and I think the other one that was wonderful was the one about,
Forks Over Knives?
yes, Forks Over Knives.
So that's one of the very influential movies.
Yeah.
And there's a
And many of you watching this have
2
probably seen those. And they're
yeah, 2
wonderful.
dozens, and the other one was about Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead.
Yes,
That's
wonderful.
okay. So there's 3 of my favorite,
Mhm.
very influential movies. So balance is important. If you're not gonna figure out balance in your life, and whatever it is, and if you decided to, and there's different body types.
Sure.
For some people 30 bananas a day is work.
Mhm.
For some people it doesn't work.
Mhm.
So to me, thinking of
So the recommendation is really definitely that you need to either educate yourself very carefully, go about it step by step, and at least maybe find somebody who knows a great deal about it so they can get some coaching.
coaching would be good. If you can't afford coaching, there's enough information on the
Yeah.
internet. Don't idealize anybody.
Mm.
I say, oh, I've been around for 6 years. Big deal.
Exactly.
Big deal. Big deal. Don't be trying to be like me or anybody else. Like, because my diet is, at this point, is super limited.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to eat 2 salads a day like I do. I mean, they're big, but who wants to eat that? That's why
Crazy.
enjoy the
Definitely
variety.
crazy.
Enjoy the variety.
That's
But
my
don't-
diagnosis.
Enjoy the
In the
variety.
best way possible.
And slowly your taste buds are going to change, and just have fun. Have fun, but be open-minded.
Yeah.
Because, and I indicate balance is important, and educate yourself, learn about.
I mean,
And people freak out about protein, but protein is not as much a big deal as the right fats in your diet.
right.
And I know some people have fruitarian friends are not going to like that.
Mm-hmm.
They probably think carbohydrates in fruit form is the best for them.
I was just recently seeing another TEDx video talking about, suppose the food that human body is made to eat, and it was talking about a starch diet, which is actually
like
very
what?
remarkable. I mean, I'd have to, dig it up because I was watching through a portion of it, and there was a doctor who, had, majority of his clients reverse, a bunch of illnesses through a starch diet.
Starch diet. I wonder what starch. I gotta look it up. Starch diet.
Well,
First thing I think
Interesting.
is starch diet. They're eating potatoes all day long. Okay.
I think he had a couple of different things, but I mean, potatoes wasn't so much. I think it was I have to take a look to be sure.
Starch diet.
But I thought it was very interesting.
Baked potatoes every day, 3 times a day.
I don't know if you could eat grass if you like a cow. I mean, I wonder how much of that's starch.
I don't know. That's what be interesting. So I'm definitely gonna look it up. So balance is very important. Learn about fats. Learn about omega-3s. Very key. And if you are in a meditative path and a spiritual path, I don't think things.
Sun gazing, eat sunlight. No, I'm kidding.
So
But
a lot-
partially, only partially.
There's
kidding.
there
Interesting
is a whole community. People idealize sun gazing
yes
philosophy. So they think like, well, I'm gonna eat less and less and less, and then I'm not gonna eat anything. I'm gonna only get energy from the sun. And there's some horror stories.
Yeah.
There's whole communities all over the world that
I think they're
breatharianism is
they're-
another thing. I would say don't idealize. Don't put a big goal. Small goals.
yeah.
Educate
And
yourself.
always gradual, because I think you'll find out very quickly whether or not these things are working or not. If you take it
The
step by
interesting
step.
part is that what will happen is if you go too fast, you'll bounce back further.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you're eating fast food and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna eat raw food now. Well, I guess you can't get further than fast food.
It's pretty
You-
far.
We're gonna eat that dirt.
Dollar store food.
So you could, if you were eating now Whole Foods diet. You eat Whole Foods diet, you eat buying organic maybe, eating meats, clean diet.
Mm.
And then you decided to go raw food. And you didn't really eat what's good for your body type. Right? What's good for your
it'll crash.
mindset. Because everybody, we are
crash.
pressed into funny little things.
It'll
Our
crash.
minds are weird. Everybody's different. Our mind has, we have issues, food issues, psychological issues, childhood issues. So we pressed into funny little entertaining
Shapes.
shapes,
Mm.
emotional and mental shapes.
Mm.
So you have to be aware. It's an educational process. You know, we live here to grow and learn. It's not about.
Either way, it comes back to
So
taking,
you'll have to be very careful,
Very
aware of conscious. It's the same as you're talking.
educate yourself.
Educate and
step by step.
implement, and then observe.
Mm.
Like a very scientific approach,
Yeah,
right? Very,
absolutely.
and then
Consider it an experiment.
Yeah. So, and of course, if you're sick with something, that's a whole different ball game.
You make sure you
You
do it under some kind of
some
like
supervision, and find some good doctors like Dr. Lodi, Dr. Jan, and stuff like that. They implement some healthy diets in a very, very
And we'll include some links there.
yeah, well, definitely. Gabriel Cousins, there's some super healthy diets out there under medical doctor supervision, or people with advanced degrees and they have doctors and staff and things like that. It's really cool. They know what they're doing.
And I think that leads us to, a pretty good portion of what we wanted to talk about today.
Yes. So.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Take a look at some of the links we've got. This is Carlos Londoño.
And Dennis Sahanov of Zen Mystery and Emerald Man Hour.
Yeah, and namaste.
Namaste. Adios, amigos.
Ciao.